Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the show. Namaste. I hope you are enjoying this holiday season. This episode is being released just about 2 weeks from Christmas. So we are getting close, and I'll tell you what, I have been using all of the things that I've been suggesting that you do because it's a lot this season. So I hope that they've been helpful for you, and I'd love to hear from you if there's been something that has been particularly helpful. Send me an email. You can find me on Instagram and Substack. Those are the two platforms I usually hang out on. So you can send me a message through either of those avenues. But I really hope they've been helping make this season more enjoyable for you. A season where you feel free to create the experience that you want to have, and one that really aligns with your values, with your energy levels, with what's really important to you, things that you want to have memories around, because really that's what we're after during this holiday season, right? Is creating those experiences that light us up on the inside and create beautiful memories for ourselves, for our families. So I hope this series has been helping you do that. And if you didn't listen to last week's episode, I had a guest on, Britt McCallion, and we talked about different energy practices. And she calls it energy hygiene. And I love that. I love that word, that terminology or label, because we're busy people, right? So often maybe we did one of the practices and then we forgot about it and we moved on with our lives. But managing our energy is like caring for our physical body. We wouldn't brush our teeth every once in a while and say, that's good enough. You know, I did it here and there. I did it once a month. We need to brush our teeth every single day so that our teeth stay healthy. And for our energy to remain healthy, we need to do the same thing. We need to be aware of and work with our energy every day. And that can be as simple as taking a few long breaths, a little break in the middle of the day. It can be taking a little walk outside. It doesn't have to be long and it doesn't have to be complicated. You don't need a guide. All you need is to be aware that you're feeling like your energy is low, and you then do something, whatever calls you, to manage that energy. It could be a physical thing that you do, a mindset practice, a breath work, a meditation. There are so many different options, which we have talked about in previous episodes. So if you're not sure what to do, if you're not feeling particularly intuitively called, then go back, take a listen to some of those other episodes, and maybe you'll get some good ideas from them. This week, we're going to be talking about something that I think is pretty common and drains a lot of our energy, physical, mental, emotional energy, our life force energy, which in yoga is called prana. But it's one that we are often unaware of, right? So when we have too much on our plate, when we're in overwhelm, we're pretty like, that's pretty obvious. If we didn't sleep enough, that's pretty obvious. If we have some person in our life who's really difficult and draining, very obvious. This one is much less obvious, and it really came to my mind because I became aware of it in my own life. And I thought, well, I'm going to share this with you guys. So today I'm going to be sharing a personal story in hopes that you can relate to this story and become aware of this energy drain in your own life. But before we do that, I want to remind you that the best way to stay in touch with me is through my newsletter. My newsletter goes out every Monday afternoon. It includes the link to the current episode, the most recent episode, but then it also goes on to talk on another topic, a topic that's completely separate from this episode topic. So you get two pieces of content. One is the podcast, and one is whatever I'm discussing that week in the newsletter. The newsletters are very digestible. They're easy to read. I keep them intentionally on the shorter side because I know you guys are busy and your email boxes can become flooded, and I don't want to be another thing that you have to go through. So they're inspirational, but they're very consumable. And then what I do is include a link to my Substack. So if you want to go deeper, if you want to take a topic and really dive into it, then you can click on that link and head over to my Substack. All right, so the link to sign up for that newsletter will be in the show notes. And now we are going to move on to this week's topic. Okay, so Here's what happened. I told you I was sharing a personal story. So we were on our way this year to go get our Christmas tree. And it was myself and my husband, my daughter, who is 17 and in a kind of difficult phase right now. I think, is really ready she's a senior in high school. I think she's really ready to launch from the nest. She really does not prefer to be living with us at this current moment. If anybody else has a teenage daughter or son out there who's in this phase, I would love to hear from you because it would make me feel less alone. She just really, I joke all the time and say that we have a renter who doesn't pay any money. Like she just lives here, but tries to avoid us at all costs. And so, that is challenging right now, especially with it being her last year of high school and me really wanting to connect with her and have beautiful experiences together before she goes off to college, and her not really feeling the same way about what she wants. So she is often really kind of sullen. She can be rude. She can be quick to lash out. And we're having to manage this behavior and do it with as much compassion as possible. But it's challenging. It's difficult. And anybody who has a teenager out there who's going through this, I know you feel me. You know what I'm talking about. So she's in the car with us. Then my son is in the car with us, who is 12. He is still, he is not an adolescent at all yet. He is very sweet, very kind, very loving, very open, happy. And really all he wants is for everyone to get along in the family and for us to have a good time and to connect with his sister, to be honest. I think he really desires connection with his sister, who at this present moment does not really desire connection with any of us. So that is challenging for him. And I am, sympathetic to how he feels. Okay, then there's my husband. My husband is a wonderful man, very loving, kind, but he is currently dealing with a tremendous amount of stress at work. He's working extremely long hours. He is quite frankly burnt out. He is exhausted. He is experiencing an uptick in anxiety. He's just really having a hard time right now, kind of managing the amount of overwhelm that's in his life, which is ironic given his wife and what I do. But I found that no one in my family seems to want to listen to me. They need to go to outside help and then come back to me and say, this is what you told me to do. So I think that's pretty common too, but also frustrating. So he's having, his challenges. My daughter's having her challenges. My son is this open heart. And then there's me who, I, of course, just want to have a great day. This is my daughter's, again, last year before she goes off to college. We're picking the Christmas tree, which has been a family tradition. We go to a tree farm and we have it cut down, and then we go to a specific diner afterwards. It's a long-standing tradition, and I want it to be good. I want everyone to have a fun time, an enjoyable time, and create a good memory, right? That is my desire. So we are in the car, we're driving to the tree farm, and it's a pretty long drive. It's about an hour from where we live. And all of a sudden, I notice that I feel this tension in my body, that I'm holding tension, that my shoulders are a little like drawn up towards my ears, that my jaw is a little bit clenched, that my gut feels a little bit like I'm kind of holding in my gut. And I start to wonder, why am I feeling like this? I notice these sensations. Nothing's really happening. There's Christmas music playing. It's a beautiful, sunny, wintry day. We're driving along. Nothing is warranting the way that I'm feeling. And I don't know why, but for some reason, it became very clear to me that I was in a pattern of behavior. And that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about how unhealthy patterns of behavior can drain our energy. In yoga philosophy, this is called a samskara, or the grooves of habit. That's another way of defining a samskara. They're essentially patterns of behavior, neural pathways. There are many different ways of describing it, but they are these patterns that we repeat over and over. And the more that we repeat them, the more ingrained they become in our minds and in our bodies. And what I realized was that I was anticipating my role as protector and fixer. I was anticipating that my daughter would somehow be unkind to her brother and I would have to step in and smooth things over. I was anticipating that my husband would get stressed out about something because right now it doesn't take a lot, and I'd have to redirect him and help him, calm down and come back into a good headspace. I was anticipating that each of them would be unhappy, disappointed, hurt, feel unseen at some point during the day, and I would need to make it better, right? All of this was going on completely subconsciously. Had you asked me when I got in the car if I was thinking any of those things, I would have said, no, absolutely not. This is going to be great. We're going to have so much fun. It's going to be a great day. But the moment I started noticing this tension that I was holding in my body and investigating, asking, really truly asking. I know that sounds funny, but if you didn't hear my episode, it was a while back now. I will link it in the show notes on internal family systems. That is where we learn that there are many different parts of ourselves, and each part has developed for a reason. And it's usually in response. It's a protective mechanism. It is developed to protect us. And we can work with these parts when we no longer need them to protect us. We can work with them by talking to them. So that's where that speaking to the tension in my body came from. And I will link that episode in the show notes. But I realized by asking myself, asking my body, why, where is this tension coming from? That this was a pattern of behavior, that I've been doing this for years without really identifying it, without putting words to it. If you're a longtime listener of this show, you know that my daughter went through a lot with her both physical and mental well-being. And there was a lot of helping her to get through that, and then trying to buffer my son from that time in our lives. And then I saw it go back even further than that, right? So I saw kind of this more recent experience of me being the protector and the fixer. And then I took it back even further, and I recognized that as a child, my brother, who has ADHD, autism, and Tourette's disease, was a social outcast when we were growing up. He was routinely made fun of, bullied, beat up, and I was his protector. I would step in to protect him throughout my childhood, countless occasions of me stepping in to help my brother and to protect him. And I saw that as my role. I saw that as my duty as his sister. And my mom, who was understandably heartbroken by what her son was going through, would always ask me, please include him when you're with your friends. Make sure you're really nice to him. She would give him extra privileges that she didn't give me. And she was trying to protect him. And as a parent, I totally understand that. She was doing the best she could to ease his suffering. But as a child, I absorbed that message that I was in some way responsible for making sure that he was okay, for repairing the wounds that had been inflicted on him, for being part of his healing. And so, where's that? Then I took it back even further. And when when I was very young, my grandmother on my mom's side, she created a lot of pain in our family. And at one point, my mother and father stopped speaking to her. She was very mentally ill, but us kids still remained in contact with her. And my grandmother would speak to me endlessly about all the bad things that had happened to her in her life, and how much pain and how much depression she had endured, and about all the people who had abandoned her and damaged her. And I was expected to be her sounding board, to listen, to give advice, and to make her feel better, right? So to once again be the fixer. I'm gonna make you feel better by listening to you and agreeing with how awful those experiences were, promising to never leave her the way other people in the family had left her. And this started when I was about 10 years old. So over and over in my family dynamics of childhood and then into my own family, I found myself in the position of protecting, fixing and absorbing the energetic impact of others. It has even happened um, in my now family, my husband and children, between my husband and my parents. And so it's there are so many times in my life, I could go on endlessly, where this is the role that I took on. And I released that. To be very honest, I released that in every other aspect of my life. It was causing me a tremendous amount of suffering, and I recognized it, and I put boundaries around me to protect myself. And I have benefited incredibly from those boundaries that I've created. However, I wasn't seeing it. I wasn't fully seeing it. So I saw it in other areas of my life. I did not see it in my role as mother, wife in my current family and how I was doing it. And so I realized on this beautiful sunny winter day, driving on a country road, listening to Christmas music, um, that that's what I was doing. And I had been doing it for so long, and it was draining me emotionally, physically, and spiritually. I was trying to control an experience, right? I was trying to control my son's my son's experience of that day. I was trying to control my daughter's behavior, my husband's behavior, all in an effort to make sure everyone was okay and that everyone had a good day. And that's impossible, right? It's truly, truly impossible. And it requires a tremendous amount of energy, right? Just the energy that I was holding, because the tension that I was holding in my body is a lot of energy. Even that slight, even though, it's just a slight tension of the jaw or a slight lift of the shoulders, it's a lot of physical energy that you're using to hold those muscles tense. It's a lot of energy to be anticipating what someone's going to do, what they're going to say, and how you're going to step in and fix it, right? That's a lot of physical energy, mental energy, I should say. And then there's the energy of feeling responsible for other people's experiences. All of these things are they just zap our energy physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. They are our energy body, which is the energy that surrounds our body. It's exhausting. And I saw it so clearly. It was like I had been looking through dirty glasses before, and someone just took them off my face, cleaned them up, and then put them back on. And I was like, whoa, I did not see that before. So that's what it's like to see a pattern of behavior that you didn't see previously. And it's also what it means to be awake. If you are, if you're listening to spiritual podcasts, reading books, wherever you are in your spiritual journey, you may have heard this term to live awake. And what that means is not to actually physically be awake versus asleep, but to be awake in your waking hours, to see life as it is, not as you want it to be, not as it was, not as, you would like to manipulate it into being, just as it is. And in that moment, I had a moment of waking up, right? And that's where awakening, the term awakening comes from. So it can happen in an instant, and it's like all of a sudden you see something that you didn't see before. And I think probably you've had situations in your life where someone says something to you and it really lands, it hits, whatever it is. You're like, wow, that's so true. And then you reflect back and you realize, actually, I actually heard this before. Someone told me this before. This was not the first time I'm hearing this thing. And yet I wasn't ready before that. I couldn't hear it with the depth that I am now hearing it with, right? So that's you waking up when you start to realize something, pattern or behavior or something else that you just weren't able to see clearly before, and now you can. So I'm telling you all this so that you can clean your own glasses, right? We all have patterns of behavior that we pick up, usually in childhood. We were raised by imperfect people because people by nature are imperfect, right? My children will have patterns of their own that they'll have to unravel, that I have handed down to them or my husband has handed down to them. And the job of awakening, right? The job of returning home to yourself, the job of, becoming enlightened on this path of enlightenment is to become aware of these samskaras, these patterns of behavior that aren't serving us, and then to change them, right? Ultimately, it's to change them. For me, in that moment, it was to relax my body. It was to intentionally let my jaw release, let my shoulders come down, to take some long, slow, deep breaths, to have self-compassion, to place a hand on my heart and have love and compassion for myself, to say, wow, you've been holding that a long time. And it has kept you in sympathetic activation around your family in fight or flight. It has been using a lot of your brain power. It has been creating fatigue. It's put you in, emotional loop patterns, right? Feeling guilty, feeling angry, feeling shame if I couldn't control the situation, right? If I couldn't make sure that everyone felt seen and heard and happy. Um, and all of those emotions, they have landed in my body. And I have to release them. I have to release them or they get stored in the tissues. So the point is that you have to have compassion for yourself. When you recognize a behavior, that's actually it's a moment to celebrate, right? It's like in meditation when the mind wanders away from whatever your point of focus is. So if you're focusing on the breath during meditation and you realize, oh my goodness, my mind has wandered, I'm thinking about what I'm making for dinner, and you bring it back to your breath. For many people, that is they don't like that, right? They feel frustrated or they feel shameful. They feel like they're bad at meditation. That actually is a moment you should celebrate yourself. You just woke up. That was a moment of awakening, right? The recognition that your awareness, that your focus had traveled away from where you wanted it to be, and then you brought it back, is waking up to the present moment. Every time you do that, you are waking up to the truth of the present moment. So if you recognize a pattern in your own life, a pattern of behavior, and you become aware of it, clap for yourself, right? Say good job. Give yourself a hug, right? Because you just woke up a little bit more. And in that waking up, you can create a life that has more ease, right? That has more flow, more love, more unity, more of all the things, more energy, right? We're talking about energy, more energy. And that is you're moving one step closer to everything that you desire the moment you wake up to something. So how how do we start recognizing it, right? How do we start to see a pattern that we haven't seen before? In yoga, we emphasize something called svadhyaya, which is self-study. It's one of the yamas and the niyamas. I've done other episodes on the yamas and the niyamas. I can link some of those as well. But those are the 10 ethical guidelines of yoga, the things that yoga philosophy encourages us, I can't speak right now, to either observe in our lives or to try to avoid in our lives. Okay. So self-study is one of those observances. Yoga philosophy is a path to enlightenment and a path to awakening, whatever term you want to use. And a key element on that journey is self-study. So just noticing, right? Self-study begins with just noticing. Maybe you notice that you keep having the same reaction, the same thought, the same conflict, right? Maybe that's what you notice. Maybe you notice the physical sensations like I did, the tightness in the body or some shortness of breath, contraction, just a general sense of contraction. And then you start to investigate it. Maybe you notice this energy drain, like, okay, every time I'm with my family, whether that be your immediate family or your extended family, I just feel so tired afterward, or anxious, or irritable, or scattered, right? You just don't feel good after certain circumstances. And maybe nothing happened, right? Maybe there was no fight, there's no disagreement. It all went swimmingly. Yet afterwards, you still feel off. You don't feel like yourself. You don't feel good, right? We begin investigating that. How about lack of choice? This is another one where you react before you even realize what's happening. And what can happen, and I think this is a beautiful thing that happens, is that these patterns, these samskaras, they're deep grooves, right? They have been worn over time. They are very ingrained in us. And when you start to become aware of them, what might happen is that you start repeating the pattern, but you will recognize that you're repeating the pattern much more quickly. And in that moment of awareness, in that moment of recognition, you now have the choice, right? Okay, I see that I'm doing this. Let me bring myself back, right? Let me create some space. Let me create a boundary. Let me shift what I'm saying or doing, right? Let me just mentally reframe this circumstance. The point being is that you get to choose. So it's actually not it's not bad that you have patterns, right? It's not bad that you haven't recognized them till now. And it's also not bad that after you recognize them, you repeat it again. I pretty much guarantee you that you're going to, okay? The beauty is that with each one of those things, you are becoming more and more awake. You're getting more and more freedom in your life because this gives you freedom and you get to make the choice, right? Even if you have that immediate reaction, you recognize it, you can pull back. Okay. A fifth way. So just to review, you have the same repetition, you have the same reaction, same thought, or same conflict over and over. You feel tension in your body or in your breath. You feel energy drained, right? Anxious, irritable, scattered, disconnected. The lack of choice, right? Reacting before your brain had time to catch up. Okay. And then the fifth one is disconnection from your values. So you find yourself behaving in ways that don't feel aligned with how you want to show up. Okay. And this is something that we might see in the moment, or it might be something that we see later on when we have a little space from whatever it is. So once again, awareness, back to awareness, back to awareness. In that awareness, we bring the possibility for choice. Okay. So once we become aware, once we do this svadhyaya, this self-study, we become aware either through what we feel in our body or how we're reacting, then we get to do this pausing and creating space because the pattern loses its power the moment we recognize it and then make a choice to move away from it. So moving away from it it may not be in a leap, right? I may find myself once again being in a situation, I'm pretty much guaranteed that I will, where I'm trying to control my family's experience, right? I'm trying to make sure that everybody's okay and that everybody has a good time and that everybody feels seen and is happy, right? I pretty much guarantee that I will end up in that situation once again. But once I see it and I recognize it, I can now create space. So I can create space between the impulse that I'm feeling, right? The impulse to make sure everybody's okay and fix things and protect people emotionally. That's always been my big thing is emotionally. To coming to my breath placing a hand on my heart, feeling my feet on the ground, right? These are very small things that we can do anywhere at any time once we become aware, oh, I'm repeating that pattern. That pattern that's not serving me, that pattern that's draining my energy, that pattern that is removing my freedom, is trapping me and caging me. I can create space between me and the pattern. And that breath awareness is so helpful. Often lengthening your exhale is really calms the nervous system. So if you breathe in for a count of 4 and breathe out for a count of 6 to 8, do that a couple of times. You will automatically feel your nervous system start to relax, the contraction in your body to relax, more spaciousness to come in. And often when we're trying to control or we're following a pattern, we get, our heart starts to race. We get very sympathetically activated, right? Our heart starts to race, our breathing becomes very fast. So if we can work with our bodies, when we slow the body, we slow the mind. Okay, so it's a two-way highway. We can work with the body to impact the mind. We can work with the mind to impact the body. But when we're in this very sympathetically activated state and this very deep samskara, this pattern of behavior that's we've repeated likely since childhood, it's often hard to change that from the top down. It's much easier to change that from the bottom up, meaning from the body upward. So that's where we bring that breath awareness, that placing the hand on the heart, having compassion, and the grounding. And yoga teaches us, we kind of talked about this earlier, to witness without judgment, right? Drasta is what it's called in Sanskrit. We observe rather than identify. So in that moment when I was in the car, I noticed, oh, I am noticing tension in my body. I'm noticing that I have the impulse to protect and to fix, right? And so I'm noticing that this is what's happening instead of saying, well, I am a protector. I am a fixer, right? That's identifying with this quality. We want to disidentify with it. Likely you already are identified with it, right? If you notice when I speak about migraine, I don't say, at least I try very hard not to say my migraine disease or my migraines. I say I have migraines, right? Or the migraine. I distance myself, right? Because I am not a disorder. I am not my migraine, right? I am not this neurological disorder. It is something that's happening inside of my body and I notice it. I notice the migraine, but I am not that. And you are not your pattern, right? You are not your irritation. You are not your fatigue. You are not your anger. You are not your anxiousness. You are not your disconnection, right? These are things that you are experiencing them and you are noticing them. Okay. So just witness without judgment, see that it's happening and disidentify with it. Okay. And then we can further slow that nervous system, regulate the nervous system. If you're in a place where you can do things like gentle movement or humming, singing is a great one. In yogic tradition, we chant. And the reason why we chant is because when you chant, just like when you sing or when you hum, there's a vibration that occurs in the chest region, which is where the vagus nerve travels down. So the vagus nerve, which is your calming nerve when it's working well, travels from the base of the skull and down through the throat and chest and then into the abdomen, and it innervates like all of your abdominal organs. And when we sing or chant or do anything that creates vibration in the chest area, we're stimulating that vagus nerve, which helps us to regulate our nervous systems and calm down. So if you're noticing it, and for me, we were in the car, we were listening to Christmas music. And so I started to sing along with the Christmas music, right? There's ample opportunities to do these things without having to go to a yoga class or a private space in your own house, right? These can be just part of what you're doing in the moment, okay? Those slow nasal breaths that I mentioned, in for 4, out for 6, no one will ever know you're doing that. No one will ever recognize that you're doing that. If you need to do it in the moment when you recognize the pattern and you're around other people. So, as I mentioned, the patterns are deep grooves, right? They're very ingrained, embedded in our bodies and in our minds. So it's going to take some time to create a new groove. And that's what you're doing, right? You're creating a new groove, one that is healthier for you, one that doesn't drain your energy, one that gives you freedom, one that allows you to continue on this path of awakening. So just be aware of that, right? Just be aware that this is not like flipping a light switch. It's much more like a dimmer switch. And over time, with practice, you will start seeing or noticing that you are performing the pattern less frequently, or you're noticing the pattern more quickly and doing things to step back from it, right? That's what we're after here. We're not after just shut it off like, like a light switch or like a faucet. We're after awareness and small changes in behavior. But even those very small changes in behavior, even just the awareness alone, I promise you, will change how draining that pattern is on your energy. You will notice a distinct difference in how drained you feel after, let's say in my case, spending that time with my family, right? How much less drained. If any of you have ever had a medical condition that was maybe took a little while to diagnose, it wasn't really sure what was going on, and finally you got an answer, you may have noticed that you felt so much better. And you didn't feel better. The condition was what the condition was, but just having a name for it, just having it recognized, just being aware of it, it helped you to calm down and to feel better and for it to be less draining on your body and your mind. And this is the same, right? We are just, as I mentioned in the beginning, that's internal family systems. And this pattern developed in response to something that has happened in your life, right? Whether you're aware of it at this moment or not. And just by turning towards the pattern and saying, I see you, I understand, why you're here, why you came, what you're trying to protect me from. Just that small, compassionate step. And to say thank you. And I thank you, right? I thank you. Um, will really impact your energy. So this is a discipline, right? In yoga, we call it tapas. Tapas means like fire or heat, and it's the heat of consistent effort. So I invite you into tapas. I invite you into consistent effort of becoming aware of when your body is telling you that something's off, and then investigating what that might be to see if you can identify a behavioral pattern. And then to, like I said, have compassion, right? Self-kindness, non-violence. We call it in ahisma in yoga, non-violence, right? And that non-violence is in this scenario is towards yourself, right? We're not being violent to ourselves. We're not being harsh with ourselves. We are choosing to be compassionate. So I hope that that was very helpful to you. I would love to hear if you came up with a pattern. Journaling, I did not mention journaling, but that's not one you may be able to do right in the moment, but it's really helpful for identifying the pattern. So if you're noticing, every time I'm with this person or these family members or whatever the situation is, or maybe it's something at work, whatever it is, that I don't feel right, right? I don't feel good in my body. I have kind of negative emotions. I'm quick to react, all of these things that we talked about. Maybe pulling out your journal when you have the moment and just start writing. Why do I feel these things in this situation over and over? Where is this coming from? Ask yourself, ask the pattern to reveal itself. It wants to be seen, right? These patterns, these parts of ourselves, they want to be seen, acknowledged, recognized. And when we do, they are much more likely to take a backward step in your life, much more likely to understand that your higher self is in control and that they don't need to necessarily protect you. And so they will weaken, right? That the strength of the patterns will decrease because they don't feel that they have to protect you in the way that they once did. Okay, so that was a lot. I hope it was helpful. I hope my story, I'm always careful with, I don't ever want to make this podcast about myself. This podcast is about you. But I am a human just like you, so I'm going through a lot of the same things as you are. And sometimes I think telling a story really illustrates a point better than just talking about a concept. So I hope that story was helpful to you. And I would love to hear your stories. I would love to hear maybe you've recognized a pattern in your past, and I would love to hear what it was and how you recognized it and how you took steps towards changing it. All right, my friends. I hope you have a beautiful week. You get everything done that you need to get done. From that first episode, I will just remind you that first episode of the month where we talked about energy, what is enough, right? That's the question. When I talk about getting everything done, what is enough? Define for yourself what enough is and don't do more than that. All right, namaste. I love you all so much. Mwah.